And I'm up. What's up, everybody? Mike Sims here with Let's Be Blunt, the latest episode of Let's Be Blunt. Really a whirlwind of a week, of a day, of a year. Hell, what is it? December already? We don't even know. But I literally had a commute in this morning from Baltimore, Maryland, by way of Washington D.C. I've been up in D.C. since Tuesday, meeting with lawmakers, politicians, congresswomen, congressmen, representatives. Up in the House of Representatives and the Capitol Hill, and meeting with staffers and people that are strategically in this industry, haphazardly or whatever, but different positions within their political powers are greatly affecting our industry. So we went up with my buddy Joe Fox with Alpine Hemp out of Hickory, North Carolina, and we went with some lobbyist groups, representatives that are hired by very large cannabis companies, and we went up there to put a personal story and a personal face to this industry and to the movements that are happening. Pardon me. About 30, 40 minutes before this, the Biden administration made a historical announcement that's never been made before. Officially, marijuana, or cannabis as we know it, has been moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And the purest of us and the people that are fighting for this realize that it is a win in a lot of ways, but a lot of sit in infinity, forever. So with the movement of Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, if nothing else, it now forces these lame duck politicians to take a side, to take a vote, publicly so their constituents can see where they fall on cannabis. And as these studies come out of what we've always known, that this is a super food, a plant, a nutritious supplement that this earth gave us to heal us. Should never have been made illegal. And now we're fighting to get even the smallest parts of it back. However, now at Schedule 3, this opens a lot of doors for banking, interstate commerce, testing, availability, understanding, public reference and public transparency on the testing being done and the findings of these tests. And hopefully make way to propaganda speech, to actual facts based around this plant and its effects on the human body. So with all that being said, historical day, huge movement, Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. First time in history in 100 years we're in the right direction. It's not perfect. It's not exactly what we want, but now we're going to see the ripple effect of what does this do to banking now? What does this do now to how it's dispensed, how it's produced, and all these things. So hopefully we can get sensible regulatory framework around this industry to make it safe and to build to kill stigmas and propagandas, to get people to use this plant for what it's used for, to heal, to help, and to revolutionize how we do everything from how we build, the materials we use, the plastic problems. Having these funding now to keep fighting the war on drugs, now we can go for mental health help. We can reduce our overcrowded prisons. We can clear up our court systems. This opens so many doors for progression at this point. So with all that, I digress. Meeting with everybody in the last few months and up until this week, the big topic on the table is the 2018 Farm Bill's up for renewal. It was supposed to be renewed last year. It got pushed out last year till now September of this year. But after speaking to everyone, the markups start on the Farm Bill this week coming. And it seems like we're at least going to keep the hemp portion of that intact as is. A lot of politicians and attorney generals and all kind of people are trying to push for a reclassification of hemp in lieu of what was decided in 2018. And a term that's being thrown around constantly is intoxicating cannabinoids. And that's a slippery slope. And that's something I think both sides are kind of agreeing on. Classification of intoxication is subjective without a real system to test the level of intoxication. And being a lifelong cannabis user, I can tell you the amount of cannabis that I can use and the effects on me is not going to be the same as the person that just started using. So there's a lot to be figured out here, but at least we're figuring out things. Georgia, I think, is going to lose smokable flower in the coming weeks. And then, Illinois and a few other states are making state movements to ban our industry and the hemp industry. And all of this is being led by multi-state operators of large marijuana companies, not even within the United States, outside the United States and Canada and other countries around us, where they're paying lobbyists to come speak to our U.S. politicians and fearmonger them, and the kids are overdosing, and this is a wild west, and there's so much danger. And listen, there are some dangers in every industry. Sugar kills thousands of people every day, but the deal is this is all fear-mongering, and they're trying to say that we're causing all this harm, but really there's not. Yeah, there's children and adolescents that get a hold of these products, but there's children that get a hold of chemicals and all kind of things that could be harm. So, I think we need to take the onus back to our own responsibilities and doing the right thing at all times. But it's not the plant that's the issue. And these children that are getting a hold of these products or overdosing on cannabis products, they're not dying. They might feel a little crazy. It might get uncomfortable. It might get a little scary for everyone. But you go to the hospital, they give you an IV, they give you some water, the kid sleeps it off, everything's good. Again, not saying children should be using these products. But if they do get to them, a lot more things worse could happen. So, with all of that being said, fresh off the plane, commute in from D.C. today, we decided to go ahead and do a podcast. I have a next guest that'll be coming on. Was introduced to me kind of through an employee friend, and he is in the South Carolina market where we just exited. And, as we have some states that are way more open and liberal to this industry, we have some that aren't. In South Carolina, if you guys have been following along, is not very open to the cannabis industry or any kind of progression in my opinion. But with all that being said, we have Wade, and I knew I was going to do a last name.
You're fine, Tollison.
Wade Tollison. Wade Tollison comes to us by way of South Carolina. What part of South Carolina are you from?
So originally from Spartanburg, South Carolina. My shop's in Duncan, but I did move up to Anderson not too long ago, about 3 years ago.
Okay.
I actually kind of like that because it gives me a wider range to kind of see where these cities are. But, kind of to touch on what you were saying earlier, it's a lot of fear-mongering happening in the state. There's tons of propaganda that, I hate to say it this way, but the Nixon era still is very alive and well. I actually had, when I was speaking at the ad hoc committee, I want to say 3 weeks ago, for our state medical bill that I would like to point out got held in committee in the House when it got passed by the Senate in 2 months. The beginning of February, they held it and did not have a meeting till the end of April. Or no, sorry, the beginning of May, a week before session ended.
Yeah.
So if that's not holding it back, right. I don't know. But there was a very nice lady, and I don't want to, talk down on her experience because, everybody's experience is different. But she was saying how her son, thank you. She was saying how her son, quote unquote, overdosed on cannabis. And my problem with it is the amount that you need. So the testing that they've done, the amount you need is unfathomable.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
But she was blaming a lot of behavioral problems on cannabis, and my issue with it is psychological issues come without cannabis use.
Yes.
That unfortunately, that does, come with when you add them together. But a lot of that is, a household thing. It falls on the parents.
Sure.
But
and it's funny you mentioned that. Just a marijuana moment this morning. You're talking about moving from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Now we have the testing abilities and the testing results. And they actually posted a study just this morning saying there's no known link to psychosis and chronic or acute cannabis use. Mm-hmm. So you're exactly right, and that's what I tell people. As they factor these things and they do these studies or whatever, or these women, their parents that come forward, and I imagine the dude's passed away.
No, he's still alive. Yeah, he's still alive.
Okay.
Doing fine.
Oh wow! So
yeah, so that's what really confuses me.
And it's like I tell people, like, for the most part, especially things unless it greatly affects you, you're going to be who you are. Right. You're going to be an asshole whether you're drunk or sober.
Exactly.
You're going to be a great person whether you're on drugs or not. But there are some drugs that greatly affect people's decision making. But you can't use something like cannabis and say it is the cause of a much greater effect, especially without and that, you know, and everybody has the gateway argument and all these other things, which I often say I think it's more a gateway behavior than a gateway addiction.
Oh, for sure.
Because it almost immediately teaches you that you have to lie to feel normal or feel right, because what they told us about cannabis just isn't true. It doesn't affect us the same way. So you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm different than everyone, and I don't want to be outed as different.
Right.
And I've got to live this double life. I've got to lie about it. I've got to.
It's terrible.
And people just ultimately don't want to get in trouble for it. It's not like they don't really want people to know.
Exactly. But, and funny enough, when I was out in California, that whole anxiety part of cannabis, I truly believe a little bit of it was that fear of getting caught. And when I was out there,
had that conversation.
Right,
does paranoia come from the fear of getting caught or something in
exactly
the profile?
Right. So I'm in California where it's completely legal, and I'm in a private residence, nothing going on. As soon as I spark a joint up, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, okay, this isn't South Carolina. I'm fine.
Right.
But I would like to touch on the whole gateway problem, because I personally am the proof that it's not a gateway drug. Okay. I've had 2 back surgeries and then 1 stem cell injection that they had to pull from my hip plate. But I have an L4, L5, and L5, S1 herniation. Those have caused permanent sciatica down my right leg. So I've been on, like, I think it's gabapentin, which is nerve medication, Flexeril, which is a not painkiller, muscle relaxer. Right. And then I went up from hydrocodone 5 to 15s, then that stopped working, so it went oxy 5 to 15s. So
natural progression.
Exactly. Yeah. But my problem is I think at the peak of it, I was at 4 15s a day.
Wow.
And I had people who were genuinely concerned about it, and I was too, because I was only, I want to say 22, 23 at the time, and I was always told growing up, that's not what you want to do. You don't want opioid medication, and when it stops working, that almost makes a concern. It is. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to go down that path. How do I avoid it? So I found medical cannabis, and I went out into California, and I was off my opiates within a month.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I loved it.
I love it. And we get a lot of those stories, man, and something important that people need to know, like, I'm not completely anti-pharmaceutical. Mm-hmm. However, historically, and what most people don't know, all mostly pharmaceutical companies do is take a natural known herbal remedy and synthesize it. Oh, sure. and regulate it and synthesize it, make it overly complicated so only they can make it so they can profit.
Exactly.
And what we're seeing is now that these reins are getting loose, we're seeing what we've always known. Plant medicine's where it's at.
It is.
Of course, there's some pharmaceutical drugs that are absolutely necessary, and I'm not a doctor, and but it's where it's at. And I think people are willing even to not be at the optimal out of pain, just to be managing pain, but not have that codependence.
That's exactly it.
That will kill you.
Exactly. Exactly. One big problem that I faced when I was on those opioids, I would take it, the medicine would kick in about 30 minutes, and an hour later I would forget if I took it or not.
Right.
And so it was always a gamble. So, luckily I had people who cared about me who were like, hey man, would you mind if I, dose those for you? And I said, by all means, because I did not want to get addicted.
Sure.
And so, this is kind of where my story in cannabis starts.
Yeah, let's get into that. Yeah. So you're currently in cannabis now.
Yes, sir.
What is your why? That's why I have like that.
Oh yeah, you're good. So originally, after I moved back here, I really wanted to bring cannabis to South Carolina because I genuinely believe, especially with just veterans alone, that it could help so much. Because my grandfather was a 28-year veteran. He was in the Army, retired as a command sergeant major. Was a commandant of the drill sergeant school at Fort Jackson for 4 years in the very beginning. But he was on a slew of medications.
Sure.
And I was, deep down in my heart, I know that the 13, 14 pills was causing, he had 4 brain tumors, he had a failed cataract surgery, he had grand mal seizures all the time, and his medicine cabinet just kept getting bigger. So it really made me think, okay, well, what can I do? And then my back surgeries happened, my opioid addiction happens, and I said, okay, well, now I'm in the same boat. So I did some research, found out that THC is a fat-soluble molecule, so that for the transfer of it transfers a lot easier when it's combined with a fat. Like I use coconut oil in my chocolate bars. So after that research, I was kind of messing around because where I worked at the time was a vape shop in Duncan called Vital Vapors. The owner was Joe Trudeau, great man. I mean, one of the best people I've worked for. But he wanted to start a Delta 8 because he saw that, you know, that was coming around. And so he asked myself and one of our employees that if we could, you know, help him out, you know, try to get this going. So we get going, and one day I'm just bored. And we had a company come in that was selling chocolate already, and it kind of sparked that idea. I'm like, well, I see a lot of low milligrams. I said, well, what about the high milligrams? Because I've noticed with Delta 8 for myself personally that I have a higher tolerance for it.
Sure.
So I did more research, and then found that if I could suspend the Delta distillate in coconut oil, compensate for the THC loss, that if I added it to the chocolate, that it transfers so much easier, and that is really what has kept me off the Percocets and all stuff like that.
That's awesome.
I nicknamed it the Herbal Perk.
Herbal Perk.
Yeah.
I love it.
But that's the reason why we have a high milligram chocolate, because I think myself, I actually, he's my contractor now, but he was a U.S. Navy vet named Scott. His wife uses these chocolates all the time, and he's a wonderful lady. She was in the service, I think she was CSI in Georgia for a while, but she's been using them ever since the first time she tried it. She's like, I don't need my medicine. That's her medicine. She just had surgery, and like every week.
Yeah, we've now countless customers, the same deal, came in 14, 15 medications off everything now.
Exactly.
So now, are you a brick and mortar store? Are you a brand here? Or?
A little bit of both. We're just really trying to start off. You know, with South Carolina, it's really hard to conduct business.
Yeah.
So we started off as a wholesale company. I was using the back of his juice mixing room, which was, you know, already set up in that clean room-esque state.
Right.
So I started doing that, and we wholesaled it, and we sold it to his store, Vital Vapors. I had one of my buddies, Seth, picked it up at Collegiate Vapes in Greer. Great guy. And you know, I just kept going out more and more and trying to pass this along. And then I would say the biggest break that we had was a store in Easley called Old Town. There was a woman named Charity that really believed in the brand, because she said, your product is good, but your packaging is not.
Right.
And so at that point, that's where we started to get into our packaging, starting to really try to look good and be a brand. I got my retail license, I want to say late last year, early this year, because I realized that we were missing a lot with just being wholesale, because I've had so many people contact me saying, hey man, I've seen the stuff that you post. I see that you went to the State House and you're talking about it. I just have questions, and so I'm answering questions, and I'm like, oh hey, well this might work for you. A big thing that I've pushed to a lot of people here recently is the 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratios, because the number one thing that I hear, especially with the medical cannabis advocacy, is I don't want to be high.
Right.
And I get it. I do. You got stuff to do. I mean, me personally, I can push through it because I've been doing it for years. But like you were saying earlier, everybody's tolerance is different.
Right.
So I get them on the 1-to-1s, and they come back to me saying, you know, where was this my whole life? And I said, you got to talk to your politicians.
Right.
That's the problem.
And that's, you know, to that too. I mean, traditionally, Republicans have been against this, Democrats have been for it. But I met with both sides of the party this past week, and I think everybody's finally agreeing that the cat's out of the bag. This isn't going anywhere. You know, it's here to stay. So let's figure it out.
Exactly.
Deal, you know, so what is the temperature currently in your part of South Carolina with law enforcement? And I don't know. I'm sure you know about our store and everything.
Right.
The final straw from us was the bullshit letter from SLED saying that Delta 8 and Delta 9 is illegal.
Right.
How do you guys feel about that? How are you getting around that? Are you dealing with anyone on the local level?
So it's been a fight with SLED the whole time.
Yeah.
They definitely do not like to work with anybody. They definitely want to be their own law. That's what we're noticing.
Because they're cashing the fuck out.
Oh, exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
Now, thank the Lord, knock on wood, that we have not been raided, because we try to stay by the federal book as possible, because I guess the state just forgets that Fed trumps state.
Right, yeah. They definitely forget.
Right.
I'm good. I can get. No, I'm good.
You're good. So basically, the problem that we're facing is SLED's acting on an opinion from the Attorney General made back in 2021 that he thinks, in his opinion,
no law.
Right, no law, never, and we haven't passed anything. That our bill is so vague that it blankets THC. But what they forget is we fall back to the federal definition of hemp, which brings in that whole conversation of 0.3% delta 9 THC.
Right.
So, we've kind of gone off. That's why we did delta 8, because I was like, that's going to be a stable compound. It works. We know stuff like that. We have CBD, because that one, I would say, in South Carolina has been a little bit more accepted. But the problem that we run into besides SLED is a lot of the vape and tobacco stores that are pushing stuff that is not quality or not
right.
checked or anything like that, and still passed because, actually, funny enough, you guys up here in North Carolina, we saw how you guys did it and we were really impressed.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. We're part of the smokable hemp ban and fought that. Mm-hmm. We're basically trying to pass bills right now in North and South Carolina that are identical. We obviously tapped out, bowed out, but I was doing the same thing right after our raid, and I was telling everyone, if you guys don't jump on and help now, it's us today, it's you tomorrow.
Right.
And nobody really seemed to care or believe, and now that we pulled out, it seems like there's all this movement now where people are getting it and trying to do it. So,
another store got raided in Greenville, and they got about 30 pounds.
Yeah, that's I know them too.
Yeah, and I hate it for them. And
right.
It's, they're just trying to help people.
Sure, and that's the worst part about this whole thing. But, a lot of the legalities and stuff we can't talk about still or whatever. But ultimately, South Carolina messed up. They messed up big, and they continues to. And instead of, understanding, they might not fully understand what's going on, and they keep messing up. They just keep going in further.
It's purpose. It's purposeful,
and
for
it's
sure.
It's maddening. And meanwhile, the rest of the country seems to be trying to move forward. With exceptions here and there, but
right.
But, it's South Carolina. We just ultimately tapped out. We did it for 6 years.
I don't blame
you. And, it's all fun and games until you got an employee facing horrendous charges like ours. And
it's terrible.
So a big focus of what you do now is veterans. I see you got the veteran on.
So this is this company is Carolina Dream. They're out of Charleston. They were the ones that actually got me into politics and into speaking for medical cannabis. So that's why I actually would like to wear their shirt today, because without those guys, I wouldn't be here.
Yep,
Cody and Chris.
Yep. So I met Cody at the State House 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes.
I showed up with a person in a giant cannabis mascot costume.
I love that.
And some of the people weren't so happy to see us there, but our presence was on, which might have led to our whole political problem, may or may not have.
Honestly, with the guys at the State House, and I love Cody to death. They're the best. I don't think I would be anywhere close to being here without him.
Sure.
But the actual the politicians at the State House, they're so far behind that I genuinely believe that they look at that as reefer madness still.
Oh, it's 100%. I sat in the office of a representative yesterday with his staffers, North Carolina representative. He's retiring this year, Republican congressman. I won't drop his name, but I'm in there hearing everyone in the room of how they're against legalization, but they understand this importance medically and all this other things. And as I'm sitting there talking to him, I'm looking around the room, and there's brewery signs from local breweries all over North Carolina, throughout, and alcohol bottles and all these other things. And it's just crazy, that mental level of, we know how much damage this alcohol is causing, but you're sitting comfortably in the middle of it, staunchly talking about how we don't need this for society. And it's just like,
it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. But, regardless, I think the vibe of the whole thing is let people make their own, let adults make their own decisions.
Exactly.
Cigarettes kill people.
Right.
Alcohol kills people. Fast food kills people.
I mean, if we're starting to blame things, the spoon's the one that gained me all the weight. You know?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a slippery slope of blaming things.
Yep.
Let's see here. 2 questions. We're doing this live today, so we're off the cuff. And thanks everybody out there joining them.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Us. Let's see here. We got one question. I want to join the fight and don't know where to start. That's a great thing. So, yes, in North Carolina, is North Carolina in any danger of losing THCA? 2 great questions. So, right now, there's so many fractionalized efforts towards this, right? There's what we now have, which is crazy. You have the marijuana industry that is paying lobbyists to fight against our industry because they want marijuana recreational, and I hate all that word and everything. They want recreational marijuana rules, and they feel like the hemp industry is destroying that effort because we don't have to worry about state lines and all this other stuff, the taxation and regulation they do.
A lot of jealousy.
Right. So we got a lot of fractionalized groups and efforts and lobbyist groups that are paying all these different people, and the messages become convoluted and all over the place, and that's by design. Keep people confused. You keep people confused, you keep them not making decisions. Indecision is a decision. So there's so many different groups out there, and that's part of what my trip to DC was, and what we're trying to call for in the coming weeks, of all of us on the same team. Let's get back on the same team. I don't care which umbrella or branch or the name of your organization or your nonprofit is. Let's keep the focus on the same concise message. And there's 4 pillars we're all going for right now. Age gating, so 21 and up, with exceptions of doctors' recommendations or whatever. Age gating, labeling, testing, licensing. Reasonable regulation is our 4 pillars. With all that being said, I give my time, my company's time, and my efforts to an organization called the American Healthy Alternatives Association. J.D. McCormick, shout out to you. He had representatives up there this week, and always JD's fighting in 10 different states for this industry. He's the one ahead of all these SB 768, these other bills that are trying to pass to protect us. So to get involved, there's NORML, there's the Last Prisoner Project, there's a marijuana chunk, all of these different things. Kind of look and see what everyone's mission statement is to get involved. But the ones that are making the biggest moves are people like J.D. McCormick and the American Healthy Alternatives Association. They're the ones taking the meetings with staffers, with politicians, having the conversations, educating. A lot of these politicians simply do not understand what the hell we're talking about.
They don't know.
So, and instead of stepping out and saying, I don't know what you're talking about, they just fall in line with whatever their people, their constituents, their colleagues tell them. And that's it. So we're just trying to go in a peaceful way of education and that. And you can do it at any level. Get involved. Social media posts. Follow some of these organizations and things and say, hey, how can I come volunteer? We know when I went up this week with to DC, we took Joe Fox with us. He is an integrated farmer. He's a fully vertically integrated farmer. He grows, processes everything himself. And the Republican Party is big on farmers retaining America, building America back to what they think it was. So it's a great point. And we all come from different parts and backgrounds. But as we talk to these different politicians, we realize they all have their hang-ups on this one way or another. But we can relate it back to almost anything. Like, this does get back to the farmer. This does get back to the community. I read an article this morning that since legalization in the United States, smuggling across the border has almost disappeared. Nobody's wanting to buy cannabis out of Canada or Mexico anymore. We got the best shit here.
Exactly.
So, as we've always known, bad policy drives a lot of these issues. But to answer your question of who to get involved with, anywhere and any way you can. Be your own fight, too. But if you really want an organization to get behind, I recommend American Healthy Alternatives Association.
For sure.
Is North Carolina in danger of losing THCA? Listen, we're in danger of losing anything every day with a stroke of a pen. I can tell you the biggest threat to THCA flower is the Farm Bill, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're probably going to see that get passed through, at least the hemp portion of the Farm Bill, to little to no change.
Right.
They talked about changing it to a 1% threshold and then ultimately going total THC, but that's, again, too confusing. That would take another redefinition by Congress.
Right.
So in North Carolina particularly, I think we're the most safe for THCA. We fought for smokable hemp flower back in 2019, 20, and won. And got some pretty good language in our favor during that time to keep hemp as its parts and as its whole, whether it be salt, solvents, stem, seed, flower, what have you. So if we can bypass this issue of the 2018 Farm Bill, I think flower is here to stay, to the point of, and this is from a very reputable source, many large corporations like Cookies Cannabis brand is actually relocating many of their operations to North Carolina because of the liberal hemp space. And, I don't think we're going to lose it. Georgia's about 95% going to lose their smokable hemp flower in the next week or two. I believe Illinois is in the fight for its life. Florida has a potentially industry killing bill on their docket that could kill flower in Florida. But at the same time, Florida's going up for recreational vote in November. We actually have a recreational bill that is potentially going to get passed in North Carolina, or at least brought up to a vote. And I actually missed that call today. I just realized I need to follow up with that. But there's so many bills. I think there's 2,700 bills federally and statewide based around this subject alone. And now with rescheduling, it's all about who's going to regulate it, right, who's going to get the money, and who's going to benefit the most from it. So those are the steps we're moving through now. But as of right now, I think we're safe with THCA flower in North Carolina. And, my sponsors, King Canna, as well as Crown Town Cannabis, have some of the best on the market.
For sure.
Feel free to go out to cltcbd.com or crowntowncannabis.com. See the flower we got out there in the stores and online. Shout out to my sponsors. But, it's a beautiful thing. This flower is amazing. I love watching people heal. The market kind of went CBD, then Delta 8, and then this big synthetic push where everything came more and more synthetic, where I think ultimately we just wanted to go back to where it was to begin with, the natural flower as nature intended.
Right. Everybody's just trying to loophole, and then we come out with these cannabinoids that aren't quite cannabinoids.
Right.
And it's just really scary because the industry trying to evolve so fast, we don't want to evolve. We just want to have what we need to be available, kind of more layman's terms. But I think that especially with the synthetic jump, it's really put a hindrance on the naturality of hemp and the hemp industry. And so I would love to, especially in South Carolina, go back to flower, go for A, because my big push, because we had A flower in South Carolina for, I don't even want to say 2 years. Like it was there and then it was
a good run, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It was our number one store. And, that when they took it from us, we lost over $1 million in a short amount of time.
I hate to hear that.
Yeah. And, it's crazy, and charging my employee with marijuana is even crazier. But and Bissell will tell you, in the end, shutting down and removing more and more things from the shelves, we had people coming in asking about products, and we had a grown man, a veteran, big man, come in and realize that we no longer offer the Delta 8 gummies that he had been taking that ultimately gave him his life back.
Exactly.
He almost dropped to his knees in tears.
Oh, I've seen it.
And, it's devastating. It's like to give somebody a new lease on life and then pull it back. And that's the conversation we had yesterday in Washington. The pilot program in North Carolina kicked off in 2014. We're coming up on a decade that this has been a program.
It's amazing.
And now you're still wanting to yank this out from underneath. This is anti-capitalism. This is anti-American. This
makes no sense.
You set the rules. We followed the rules. We built an industry without regulation, which we begged for regulation from day one.
We're still doing it.
We're still doing it, and you're still trying to yank it out from under us. So if you believe in America, take cannabis out of it. You can't believe this shit.
Exactly.
And it's what's killing us is, let's take it back. Let's be irrational. Let's pull cannabis word out, put another word in, make it make sense in any other realm.
Exactly.
So we got any more questions over there, Sal?
On the questions.
I appreciate those questions, and I really do. And if I didn't answer it, write us back, let us know. We'll hopefully get you if we didn't.
There's one thing I wanted to put on the how to get involved. This is actually what helped me. So on the state website, on the state house website, you can actually, I haven't checked North Carolina's, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be similar, but 9 times out of 10, you can put in your address and then find out who your representatives are. You get all their contact information.
You can do that everywhere, for sure.
Yeah, so send them an email, give them a call, or what I did, I went up to the state house and met them in person. My senator had never met anybody in his constituency that needed medical cannabis. He met me, and he went from a no to a not voting, which in my eyes, especially in South Carolina, it's a movement. Right. And
it's funny you say that. The one I mentioned with the brewery signs or whatever in his office, he said we were the very first meeting that they had ever taken surrounding this subject.
So wild.
And, and they thanked us for it and everything, and they admittingly learned something, but what people don't realize is, not to get too political,
right.
It is the people that we elected to represent the people.
Right.
And I kept finding myself in these buildings yesterday, like, am I supposed to be here? And I'm realizing, yes, we're supposed to be here.
Exactly.
We're all supposed to be here.
It's our building.
It's our building.
Exactly.
It's built for the people.
Yep.
And you may not get the actual representative themselves, but you can get their staffers,
yes,
their representation. And I'm telling you, a lot of times it's better than meeting the politician themselves.
It is.
Because it's like dealing with a nurse versus the doctor.
Some don't have good bedside manner.
Some do not, and most don't. And then you got to understand, everybody in that damn building waiting outside of that door has a problem they want to talk about.
Exactly.
They're not there to tell you you're doing a great job and we love you.
Nope.
They got a problem.
Yeah.
And so sorting through that through the proper channels and staffers, and they will take these meetings with it. They will take them over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And you never know. And a lot of the body language and stuff in these meetings, you can see people were kind of out of it or whatever, but there were moments of glimpses of hope where you realize you triggered something in them that they are relating to.
Exactly.
They're not a cannabis user, but they know somebody's died of cancer.
Exactly.
Or they know someone that has a debilitating disease, or they know somebody that's trying to overcome opioids or lost their life to opioids.
Oh, yeah.
Alma Adams, one of her representatives or whatever, she's this is in her wheelhouse, even though she's a very progressive, I think, leader in Mecklenburg County, and she has kind of her structure of housing and, feeding and all these things. And I sat there and kind of showed them how everything she believes in brings back to this cannabis segment, and how it's disparaged so many families and ripped families apart over bad policy in this war on drugs, which is ultimately the war on people.
It is.
So, ultimately we've been preaching the same thing, and we're all in the same battle, but I think we get caught up too much in the ancillary part. Number one, nature has made illegal. Nobody's ever died from this in the history of ever. Ever.
And it's been around forever.
Forever.
It's had a long time for trial runs.
Right. Meanwhile, we don't get me started. But I love the fight and the push in South Carolina. In particular, in South Carolina, anybody out there listening, what do you guys need to help with? I've kind of bowed out of South Carolina. Me and South Carolina are going through a bitter breakup.
Understandable.
So, not to say I'll never be back there, but
Give it time.
It's probably going to be the last state I come back to.
I don't blame you, and especially with being burned the way they burned you. It's really sad.
More than me, my employees.
Exactly.
And my business partners.
Yeah, they had no right to do what they did, and I really hope that I pray that they win that case, because SLED needs to be taken down.
We will pursue this to the end,
For sure.
And that's the best way I could put it. But to do, like you said, we followed the federal guidelines and state lines to a T.
Yep.
We never realized that an opinion of an attorney general from 5 years ago would hold so much weight. But when you have a disrupt, when you have a corrupt department that lacks checks and balances and oversight, and you have people that are bullying and positioning themselves in different committees to make brash decisions that ultimately cost people their freedom, there's a huge problem for that.
Oh, I agree.
And I will not rest until that's made way to made right. And it's not about money for me.
No.
It's about giving peace of mind to my employee, Connie Jackson. I want to give her life back.
For sure.
I want to make her whole again, because this process has done nothing but tear her apart.
That is 100%
And
true.
you guys, just folks like yourselves or whatever, honest, hardworking American that believed in the dream, that believed in the vision, that sees the difference this plant's making, and invest their lives in it, and ultimately end up in legal trouble or worse, because of the beliefs.
And it's so sad. But on the question that you asked about South Carolina, I would, that's what I truly believe that South Carolina needs is just help with education, because we're so far behind, and a lot, support inside the Capitol, because when we're up there, like you were saying about meeting the politicians, we just need more people up there talking to their politicians, because I think they did a poll recently and it was 85% of South Carolinians supported it, and I
think nationally it's right there in the line.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And what just confuses me on the topic is when I speak to these politicians, either they're blatantly lying to you when they say they've never heard about this, or they just don't care.
Right. Or a combination of the two.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But no, getting people out.
As long as they got us divided over abortion rights, immigration, and all these other things that, are not to say it's not important, but they 100%. Keep us divided. And when we're divided, these things like cannabis seems pale in comparison. But they don't realize that it is all, well, maybe they do realize that it is all entwined together, and bad policy just brings bad results, which ends in more bad results, that more bad policy brings more. So it's a true cycle.
It's definitely a snowball effect.
It's a snowball effect. But ultimately, I think COVID taught us a lot of things. I think a lot of people started taking to think of who controls our health destiny. You know, we saw some incredibly shady things. It takes us over 100 years to prove that cannabis is safe, but we can come up with a vaccine in 3 weeks that it's good to go.
Well, it's fine.
And again, not to get political about that, but it's just like, make that make sense.
Exactly.
Like something that nature made for us versus that was man-made in weeks. And we cleared it in weeks, but yet the only reason we haven't got cannabis all this long is because we need to make sure it's safe. Like, get the fuck out of here.
We've already made sure it's safe.
Yeah, I mean, look out every day. It's here. So.
Well, even historically, we've had hemp and cannabis in America for a long time. You know, our forefathers grew that stuff.
A lot of forced to. In Virginia, you had to grow hemp. Like many. So, and people don't realize it was in our food supply and everything else. Everywhere. So our endocannabinoid systems were fairly well. They were flourishing. They're flourishing. Yeah. So, but you know, it's that full circle. I think it's like everything. But we have a huge hurdle of propaganda to get over.
That's a big thing.
You know, people come out the woodwork, especially those now retirement age or no longer have to worry about drug testing or working for someone. That's the people we need to come forward.
For sure.
Share your story.
Yeah.
You know, step out of the closet. You'd be surprised how many people have been out here smoking, waiting on you. So.
Exactly.
Or an edible or whatever.
Right. Now, you could also write your story in if you have, anxiety about speaking in front of people.
Where we have time? All right, cool. But yeah, I guess the message to all of these podcasts and everything is get involved, ask these questions, get involved with us, and I'm hoping over the next few weeks we can see more of a, I even thought about opening back up my nonprofit, the Hemp Retailers Association, to bring people back together. But it's a lot of work, a lot of red tape. Yes. I would much rather just build on what's already out there. So I'm really trying to ask all these groups to come together under the American Healthy Alternatives Association or whatever group you're on. But we need to get our message collectively together. We need to make sure we're all asking and saying the same things. Right. Because the last thing we want to do is further confuse the people that already feel alienated and ignorant to what we're doing.
For sure.
So, anything else today you want to add? Any final messages? How old were you? You're what, like 15 now, right?
So, right, yeah. 25, yeah.
25. So how long was your career? When was your first cannabis experience, your first try?
I would say about 16 years old. It was a recreational, with your buddies. Sure. The first time you ever tried it. It was an experience. I never had a bad experience with it. More of gotta love moms. I love her to death. That woman is my whole life. Yeah, she found out, and so that stopped for a little bit. Oh yeah, but
so I imagine. So your family, how did they? I guess they did not enjoy knowing that you tried cannabis the first time, or
in the beginning they didn't. Right. But I was a minor at the time, so I get it. But the older I got, the more interested I got in cannabis. I would say I started back at like 18, 19, with a little bit of like side here and there recreational use.
Right.
But I would say at like 20 years old is when I really delved deep into it, because that's when all my back problems started.
Sure.
When I needed an alternative besides opioid medication, that was the spark, 100%. But the thing I'd like to add is with South Carolina, it's trying its best, but the problems that we're facing are. And I'm not trying to speak ill by any means, but it's law enforcement. SLED has packed out like meetings. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're being shady.
They are. They're doing things that aren't illegal, but aren't morally correct.
That could be argued too. Law enforcement, by definition, is to enforce laws, not to enact them or create them.
Oh yes.
And when you show up in uniform, in government vehicle, government uniform, government dollars on the government clock,
right,
to influence and intimidate lawmakers, speakers, and everybody else, that is a conflict of interest, and there's actually are constitutional things around that, and we'll get to it one of these days.
Yeah.
But stay in your lane, and that's the thing. And the reason there's so much interest behind SLED and law enforcement is because it is $1 trillion a year business with search and seizure.
For sure.
And leads to seizing assets and being able to auction them in these police auctions, which is a great access in court, a great asset income for police officers. Cops are a business. Law enforcement is a business. And you have to have money to run that business. Where we could fund them through tax dollars, just as effectively if we legalize, they want that raw, unlimited, untaxed money from seizure.
Oh, for sure. And to touch on that, I mean, to the point where South Carolina had to take flour out of our medical bill because SLED pitched such a fit that they did not want that. And their reasoning was because they want to tell the difference between medical and recreational marijuana.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah,
just by looking at it, right?
Exactly. Because, that one must be recreational because it's more purple.
Oh, yeah. And I've actually had cops plenty of times tell me they can tell the difference. I'll give you a minute here. Name drop. Tell me where we can find you. Tell me about your product.
All right, appreciate that.
If folks listening, where can you find this, and what makes it cool and special for you?
All right, so we do have a website that's more for a wholesale. It's Amaranth Hemp, AMARANTH. That was something that my business partner Joe came up with in the beginning because it's a mythical flower. It's undying. So cannabis has been around forever. It's undying. It's not going anywhere. But yeah, so you can pick them up in most retail stores like Vital, Vapors, and Spartanburg and Duncan. I think that we have some still at Full Life CBD in Greenville and Old Town Vapes in Easley. And by all means, if you go through the website, send us a message because we're not against shipping at all. It's more of just with chocolate and in the heat of the summer, it's something that we would rather deliver ourselves.
Carolina summers are rough on chocolate.
They are.
Yeah,
but
and gummies.
Yeah, they are. They're edibles too, and that's the worst part. Is that's how most of South Carolina's transferring system, besides the vapes, and they're trying to get a little weird on the vapes now too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
they got a little weird on anything cannabis. Still, it's too much for us. We reduced our inventory offerings to probably 15% or less of what we originally offered. It's just ironically enough, though, they're putting a Nike store in our old store.
You got to be kidding! That's hilarious.
One of Columbia's. Asia Wilson, one of Columbia's natives, which is bittersweet. I love seeing progression with our minority community, and especially in Columbia. So, but Asia Wilson is going to be getting a Nike store for her new line of Nike clothing in our old Columbia store. So bittersweet, we're gone, but I love to see a minority woman win.
For sure.
So, but I appreciate your fight in South Carolina. Keep it up in your voice. So hopefully we can find ways to help each other and do it too. And understand, if you're a cannabis user and you fit a certain phylum, a certain group, you're very valuable. It's like going around with Joe. He's a farmer, he's integrator, whatever. We've had to go with representatives from the LGBTQ community, minority community. Everybody has something they resonate with that is in the cannabis space and relates to the cannabis space. So we need your voice. And if you think small things can't make a difference, think about the mosquito.
Right.
So
that mosquito.
the mosquito can change everything. It has. Sir. So keep up your efforts. I appreciate your time being on here, and hopefully we can bring the synergy together to keep moving forward. Again, a historical day,
very historical,
in the cannabis industry, in the American industry. American history has been made today. We're rescheduling, and hopefully more to come. And I can equally hate the current administration as I did the ones that followed it, and probably the ones that are coming here in the future.
For sure.
But I do want to get back to we the people, we the people, governed by we the people, and get our best interests back in place. Let's stop with the distractions, stop with the arguments, divide and conquer. Too many tactics are being used to manipulate our daily lives, and we're losing the battle overall. Take cannabis out of it. Our freedoms are being stripped from us. You can't work right now and have a decent living out here. Everything's out of control. We outsource everything. We got away from the small family, the small community, the small supply line of farmers. This was all by design, and we're all reeling from it. And we're all pointing fingers and blaming the other side. But I can tell you one thing that's amazing, and for these last 2 weeks, and I'll leave it at this, I've been in many rooms with many people, and none of us belong in that room on paper together.
For sure.
If you go by the divisions of the news and what we look like on paper and our backgrounds and our socioeconomic classes, none of us belonged in that room. And I looked around the room several times in the last few weeks and realized there's a little bit of everybody in these rooms. And the only common denominator to everybody in that room is this plant.
Yep.
And I've watched that miracle happen over and over again. This plant will bring people together like nothing else. So to me, it is the answer to world peace, to world pollution, to mental health programs, to rehabilitation from harder, worse drugs. You know, and I think if we take that control back and realize that we're way more together and way more common than not, and we have way more interest vested together than not, and less differences than we ever believed. Let's keep that focus. Let's do it with cannabis, but let's realize we are a human race. We're more alike than we're different. And if we don't get together now to change things, we're not going to have another chance. So I'm going to leave it at that. Anything else you want to add?
I would just like to say thank you for having me on. I do appreciate all the stuff that y'all do in the fight, and hopefully we'll be fighting side by side more.
We shall.
Cannabis definitely is the uniting plant. Yeah, free cannabis, because it doesn't deserve to even be in the scheduling. You know,
it doesn't.
It's hard to fathom that I can grow a tomato, but I can't grow cannabis.
We can, but it just has repercussions.
Oh, yeah, exactly. There we go.
But thanks, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We got a lot of great things coming, big movements that BMSL can't wait to share with you guys in the future. We've been doing this quite a few years. We got some great footage. I think we're going to put this to something special soon. I don't want to oversell. But we got some amazing things happening. I want to thank Basel, as always, behind the scenes making this happen. Wade, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, guys.
We love each and every one of y'all. Peace, love, and cannabis. Stay tuned. The revolution is here. Keep your TVs on. Holla.
Amazing.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.